Alachua County Commissioner Ken Cornell has recently finished his second stint as the chair of the Alachua County Commission. He was born and raised in Gainesville, educated in the public school system, and while working full-time, graduated at the top of his class from the University of Florida's Fisher School of Accounting. He has owned and operated a number of small businesses in Alachua County. He was trained as a certified public accountant and is currently a broker associate and senior vice president with Bosshart Realty Services, LLC. Ken has a long record of positive involvement in many of Alachua County's business and community organizations. He's been married to his wife Angela for over 31 years, and sons Connor and Christopher are graduates of the University of Central Florida. Welcome, Commissioner Cornell.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
So it's been quite a year. You came in as chair last year at a time when it seemed like the pandemic was slowing down. You have also lived through a couple of spikes in the pandemic. So why don't we just start with what has been your experience in the middle of a pandemic being chair?
Yeah, it's been quite a 2 years. The last year has been really interesting locally and statewide as we've seen how this pandemic has been handled by different communities around the state. Real proud of the way our community handled it. You know, we came together again. We relied heavily on the expertise and scientific knowledge of our flagship university, the University of Florida, and we really let them advise us on how to chart forward. So I think over this last year, we did a really good job of keeping folks safe, keeping our businesses running and open, and it was, although difficult, in many ways gratifying. You know, we were able to distribute over $20 million to individuals who were most affected. We were able to distribute over $5 million to businesses and nonprofits that were also affected. And now as we come out of that time, many businesses, families, and even local government are looking at how do we adapt to this new normal, what efficiencies did we learn during that time frame, and how can we kind of improve the services that we provide to our citizens at a time that for many has been very, very difficult.
You know, my office would put out the numbers every week, and it was very gratifying to see that the decisions that were being made by the Commission were resulting in real-world, provable sets of data that showed how well Alachua County was doing statewide in response to the pandemic. It was you know, one of the most interesting things from my point of view was the retreat that you all did down at Cuscowilla, and you came up with the Alachua County Strategic Guide for the upcoming fiscal year 2022. Can you kind of walk us through the main points of the new strategic plan?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we've got a new board, and with this new board comes new ideas and a fresh look at what do we want to accomplish? What do our citizens want us to accomplish? So on March 4th, as you said, we got together with a professional facilitator and tried to boil down what are the major things that this board wants to accomplish. And we came up with 4 major items. I'm going to read them for you. And I think as we talk through today, many of the things that we talk about are directly reflected back to these 4 main priorities. So the first was to achieve social and economic opportunity for all. Second was to invest in and continue to protect our environment. The third was to address the housing gap that we have. And finally, the fourth was to accelerate progress on the infrastructure investments that we've made. None of these are more important than any of the others. They're all important. And what our manager did after that retreat is worked with the various departments, and for every item that we budgeted money to, we tied back that program to one of these 4 major priorities. It's good to talk about what's important, but we know that we fund the priorities of our community. And so that was the approach we took this year.
You finished with infrastructure, and there was recently a meeting where Ramon Gavarete, our Public Works Director, presented the results of a consultant's report on pavement management, and the board had a pretty transformational discussion on how to approach roads. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I was elected 7 years ago, obviously roads was an issue then, and it continues to be an issue now. And so one of the things that we have been working on as a commission is furthering our investments in roads, but also when do we invest in, and repair roads. We know that if we let them go too long, the cost to repair is infinitely more than if we can repave them at a time before they're damaged so much. So while we've done a lot in the last 7 years, and we've increased our investment in the general fund for the roads budget from 0 7 years ago to over $4 million, in addition to the money that we pay for roads that we collect through the gas tax, the commission recognized that we've got to continue to do even more. And so really two things over the last year happened. One is we've reached out to our small cities to see how can we help their needs. But when we had that meeting, we were able to really identify what's the amount of money that we need to be investing in to keep our roads in the condition that this community deserves. And the number was a much larger number than 4 million. It was 15 million. And so we have tasked the manager with, over the coming years, the next year and the following year, how do we get from 4 million to 15 million? And the commitment for that was unanimous by this board.
You know, you mentioned the gas tax, and it's important for the public to understand that when it comes to the county's commitments to the small cities, with gas tax, with wild spaces, public places, the infrastructure surtax, the county has a history of not just going with the default state formula, but providing more money than is, required to those organizations. Is that an important thing for you?
I mean, it is. One of the things that came out of the strategic plan is that, we've got to reach out more to our smaller cities. And while a $50,000 amount annually for us may not be impactful, if you provide an additional $50,000 to a small city, it could be an additional FTE. It could be an additional person helping repair their roads. And so, so that's been the focus of this board. And in fact, what we also know is that when we're working on county roads in the smaller municipalities, that there are opportunities for us to perhaps help them with some of their roads. And so the manager and each of the managers at the small cities have been in contact so that we can coordinate county services with each of those small city services so that the taxpayers are getting more bang for their buck.
The cooperation with one of our cities, Newberry, has been in the headlines a lot lately. And I know we have a commitment to all of our cities, but tell us about the major projects that you're excited about when it comes to the city of Newberry. Sure.
I mean, the previous board and certainly this board has been very committed to helping the folks out at Newberry. I know before I got on the commission, the previous board invested over $7 million in tourist development funds to build Champions Park. We have also relocated the Ag and Equestrian Center out to Newberry, and we just cut the ribbon a couple of weeks ago on the brand new IFAS Extension office and auditorium. IFAS is in 67 counties around the state, and we know that at the University of Florida it is an incredible resource that the university and this community provides throughout the state for our farmers, for our gardeners, for our food systems. And we now have a building in Alachua County located out in Newberry that is really a flagship office for IFAS and the University of Florida.
Alachua, we had a pretty big project there too. Tell us about the Legacy Park.
Yeah, so Legacy Park is another commitment that the board has provided funds to. There are a number of activities that go on out of Alachua, from their world famous fireworks every year to concerts and venues. And Legacy Park is providing a place where folks can meet. Different events can happen. I know they've been having some different sporting events, and so it's another commitment that the county has made to the city of Alachua.
And many of the cities have community redevelopment areas, and that's a way to kind of use tax increment to help develop the core of certain areas. I know that that's something you've been very involved in your time here.
Yeah, so as property values increase, many cities need to reinvest those dollars into their downtown area or into their areas of blight. And so we have provided matching dollars to a number of the cities to help them with those reinvestments. And those cities, they know how to spend those monies certainly better than the county. And so the investment and return that they've gotten has been great. I can think of Hawthorne, the city of Alachua, High Springs, and Newberry all have community reinvestment areas that the county participates in, and it's a good win for both the county and the cities.
You mentioned tourism tax dollars with the city of Newberry and Champions Park. We have another massive project that we're in the middle of that is being funded with tourism tax dollars. Talk to us about the event center at Celebration Point.
Yeah, another real proud of this accomplishment. This is something that, again, this community has been talking about for over 3 decades. And the event center we've been working on for 3 or 4 years, specifically out at this location, and this year we broke ground. We hope to have it open for business by January of 2023. That's when the first event is scheduled. And our partnership with Viking Construction has the completion of that facility, 120,000 multi-purpose square foot facility in the center of Celebration Point, should be completed by the end of November. And what that will do is be a tremendous economic boom every weekend to not only that area but the entire county. And I actually think that it could be accretive from the standpoint of the additional bed tax dollars should more than pay for the repayment of the debt that the county is bringing on to build that facility. Some numbers for you. That facility, the county is contributing $30 million. The private developer is contributing about $15 million. We got a small grant from the state to help with the indoor track. And so this $45 million plus project will be transformational. It'll be the largest facility in the Southeast next to Birmingham. It will attract folks from all over the Southeast. And what's also great about that $45 million investment is that the developer has said that from that investment, he anticipates an additional $80 million of private investment in and around that area, which again, all gets put on the Alachua County tax rolls.
Speaking of big transformational projects, during your tenure this year as chair, we learned that we were getting over $50 million in American Rescue Plan funding from the federal government, kind of part of their COVID response. Can you talk to us about the projects that you're most excited about with American Rescue Plan dollars?
Yeah, so there's a number of those. You know, that's one-time money, and so as we think about how to spend that money, we think about that we need to make investments one time that will yield returns over the long term. And so we are able to use some of that money for revenue replacement, for a central receiving facility, for a health department on the east side of Gainesville. But I think one of the things that I'm most proud of what this commission has unanimously decided to spend that money on is we've allocated $15 million of that $52 million to county-wide broadband. The pandemic, if it didn't teach us anything, taught us that if you are not connected, then you are at a big disadvantage. Whether you have a child at home at school, whether you have an employer that allows you to work from home, or whether you just need to get information or services online. And so we've been talking about for a long time rural broadband. The federal government wants communities to invest in those monies, and so one of the things that they asked is that communities think about and roll out broadband to the extent that they can. This is another big priority of the Florida Association of Counties and FAC, and so FAC has set up a broadband committee, which I sit on, a statewide committee, and they've asked each of the local counties to come up with a county champion who can coordinate and bring folks together to roll out broadband in their community. We've elected Commissioner Mary Alford, who is our new vice chair, to be that county champion, and she will be having meetings throughout the community to identify where our greatest needs are and how we can best utilize those American Rescue Plan dollars to provide rural broadband in areas that are either underserved or not even served at all. I mean, there are areas in the county where even if you're willing to pay for high-speed access, you can't. So there's a lot of technologies coming out. We know Starlink satellite technologies. Obviously, GRUCOM has fiber to every school. There are small satellite providers in different communities. And so with that money, hopefully we will be taking the first steps to begin to roll out rural broadband.
I know that affordable housing is also an issue that's been talked about a lot in relation to the American Rescue Plan dollars. Tell us about the board discussions on affordable housing.
So, I mean, it's one of those 4 priorities, address the housing gap. So housing is largely an urban issue, but we also know that the county has a huge role to play. The citizens passed last year in 2020 the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which was the creation of an empty bucket because they know that housing is very important to the progress of this community. So we're putting some money into that Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and of the American Rescue Plan dollars, $52 million, we've allocated up to $6 million for housing. You know, a couple of years back, we stepped back and we had an agreement with the city that I think was also transformational, which is you all focus and increase your funding on Grace Marketplace up to $1.5 million. Let the county then focus our funding and increase our commitment to permanent supportive housing up to $1.5 million per year. In addition, we have taken a big step and purchased the budget in for about $3 million to provide permanent supportive housing. And so housing is something that has been talked about and talked about and talked about. And this county commission is now finally putting their, again, money where their mouth is and investing in affordable housing.
We talked a little earlier about the CARES Act dollars and the direct assistance to individuals and businesses. We later, though, got the Emergency Rescue Plan dollars, and those dollars are being used in relation to housing to keep people in their homes and to pay for rent and utilities. Tell us about the dollars we're talking about with American Rescue Plan.
Yeah, so for folks that were struggling over the last 2 years during the pandemic, the federal government provided American Rescue Plan dollars, and this board received $15 million. I think we've already spent most of that money, $8 million last year and another $7 million this year, to provide rent assistance, landlord assistance to help keep folks in their home, and ultimately utility assistance as well. And so those folks that were affected by the pandemic, that had either a break in employment or a need to get assistance because of the pandemic, had access to, in addition to the $25 million that we already talked about, $20 million to individuals and $5 million to businesses, we've had access to an additional $15 million, which has really helped a lot of people in our community.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about public safety. There has been a great deal of discussion about upgrading our radio system, and this is the trunk radio system that gets services to those in need, be it law enforcement or fire rescue or ambulances. Can you kind of frame the trunk radio discussion, where it's been and where it's going?
Sure. So Commissioner Chestnut taught me my first year, when folks dial 911, they want someone to show up. And so obviously public safety is at the top of my priorities. And so right now we have a system whereby the county is a customer of GRU, and we have realized over the last 2 years that it's important to have a county-wide system. And so this commission has decided to move forward. We actually had a meeting about that yesterday, to move forward with the deployment of a county-wide system, which the small cities, the city of Gainesville, other providers, public works providers in all the different cities, the University of Florida, Santa Fe College, would have access to. And so the county is moving forward with the county-wide rollout of a trunk radio system for public safety over the next 2 years.
I'm going to jump around here. We have so much to talk about in so short a period of time. I know that something that's been very near and dear to the Commission's heart over the last couple of years, and really a major focus this year, has been the Truth and Reconciliation process. Talk to us about that, and I know that there was a conversation last night at the Commission meeting about a important piece of it coming up.
Yeah, so Truth and Reconciliation was actually started by Commissioner Chestnut and Commissioner Hutchinson when he was previously on the board, and it's a process whereby we reflect on and tell the truth about our history so that we can then acknowledge it and move forward with regards to a number of items in our community. Institutional racism is widely acknowledged, and so we are trying to figure out how best to deal with that. One of the things that passed on the charter was that we would annually look at our policies and procedures. We hired Dr. Houchin from the University of Florida as our equity director, and she is walking the county staff through over the next year a process by which leadership will be meeting regularly to discuss truth and reconciliation, to discuss institutional racism, to discuss our implicit biases. And from that, we will be analyzing all of our policies and figuring out how we move forward where everyone has an equal voice and a seat at the table.
I know that something near and dear to your heart is how important it is to spend taxpayer dollars wisely. And talk to us a little bit about the millage rate and where the county is. There are misconceptions. I frequently hear Alachua County has the highest millage rate in Florida. Completely not true. Talk to us about our millage rate.
It's it's a part of my DNA. I'm a CPA by trade, and so everything for me ultimately goes back to how are we spending your taxpayer dollars. When I first got on the commission, our millage rate was 8.9. The cap is 10. You can't go above 10. Many counties around us are physically constrained and are at that 10 cap millage rate. This county commission has taken an approach of reducing that millage rate year after year. And I am proud to say that in the last 5 years, we've reduced the millage rate and actually gone back to the rollback rate 2 of those 5 years. And so when I started, we were at 8.9, and I believe where we are currently now is below 7.8.
Moving around a little bit, something that's been in the news quite a bit. You provided a response to it that has received a great deal of attention, is the local bill that 3 out of our 4 delegation members moved forward. Can you tell us a little bit about this bill, which I believe our commission views as kind of an assault on the Alachua County's Home Rule Charter?
Well, it's a bad bill. I mean, it is asking the taxpayers to increase the size of the government from 5 commissioners to 7. It's asking the taxpayers to reduce their representation. So instead of a taxpayer having the opportunity to be represented and speak to all 5 of their Alachua County commissioners, Representative Clemens and Senator Perry think it's better that they only speak to 1, their single member district commissioner. In addition, the 2 additional commissioners would be at large. So you would move from representation of 5 to 3. There's talk about, well, let's reduce that from 5 down to 7, or 7 down to 5. That's even worse. Because instead of you being able to talk to 5 people and now 3, you would only be able to talk to 1 person. So we know that's not good representation. We know that's not good government. Worse than that, though, is it is truly an attack on our home rule charter. There are 3 ways the citizens, if they want to change how their government governs, can change that. And it should be difficult. You know, folks say it's too hard to get petitions. When you change the constitution of a community, which is what our home rule charter are, it should be difficult. So the 3 ways are the duly elected county commission could put it on the ballot. The Charter Review Commission, which meets every 10 years, and they just met, can put it on the ballot. Or the best way would be this, if there are enough citizens that believe it's valid, they can go through a petition process, 10% of the petitions, it's about 19,000 signatures, and they can put it on the ballot. For some reason, the representatives Clemens and Senator Perry think that better government is letting them just do it for us. But it's not true. They don't truly believe that. If they did believe that, they would recommend that for all of the counties that they represent. Clemens represents Dixie County, Gilchrist County, and Alachua County. Both those counties have the exact form of government that we do. Perry represents Alachua County, Putnam County, and Marion County. Both those other counties have the exact same form of government that we do. So we know that this is not a better form of government. We know they don't believe it's a better form of government. This is an attack on Alachua County, and we intend to vigorously fight it. We hope to kill it in committee in Tallahassee, and if we're not successful in killing it in committee in Tallahassee, then we believe that it will be killed at the ballot box, because that's not what Alachua County wants.
And of course, one of the most telling things is when faced with this same thing at the state level, the majority party in Tallahassee is making it harder and harder for citizens to put state constitutional amendments on the ballot. So it's a bit disingenuous when they say, oh, just let the voters decide. This is the county charter. And
well, again, the constitution of the community should be difficult to change. And if we allowed a single representative or two or three to just add things to the ballot, we would have a very, very long ballot, which is also not good government. This is something that's serious enough to where if the citizens want it, then 10% of them could put it on the ballot.
We've only got a couple minutes left. The Waldo Road corridor and the old fairgrounds by the airport has been discussed for decades. We've got an exciting project coming in that will transform that area. Tell us quickly about that.
Well, this commission knows that when you invest public dollars into areas that need it the most, then private dollars follow. And we know that investments in the Waldo Road corridor is critical. It's why we actually worked with the city of Gainesville to change their CRA to give them up to $70 million of flexibility to make investments in the city of Gainesville on the Waldo Road corridor. So we're excited about hopefully a project at 8th and Waldo Road. We know there's activity at University and Waldo Road. That's the southern end of the road. On the northern end of the road, the county has an agreement with the Army to bring in a depot facility which will serve as an equipment facility for the southeast, not just for Alachua County, but not just for the state of Florida, but for the entire southeast. And we have been told that when that happens in other communities, it's transformational. That more than 2,000 of our servicemen and women come to our community, and it actually is something that will really help develop that part of town.
And speaking of facilities that are important, talk to me about the central receiving facility, also something that has been discussed for quite a while.
Yeah, so right now, if there's a mental health event that's happening, the police officers have two options: arrest them or Baker Act them. And we know that that's not good governance, it's not good for the individual, it's not good for the taxpayer. So there are, I think, 8 central receiving facilities around the state, communities that have invested in that type of facility. And this board and the city commission have both committed that this is something that we want to do this year, is put aside money, which we've already done, to build a central receiving facility, and then more importantly, have the operational support to provide case managers that will be available to help folks that are having a mental health crisis.
Well, former Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cornell, this went by in a flash. I know we could flesh out any of these subjects and talk about them for a long time, but thank you for that kind of recap of the last year, and it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Mark.